for allowing me to take an additional call on this, and to start off by speaking about the amendment paper. The member raised earlier the opportunities we had to improve the bill, and we in the National Party want to just thank New Zealand First for bringing this amendment paper to the table and indicate that we'll be supporting the amendment. I do have some concern about the wording "without reasonable excuse," and I expect that there'll be some litigation through the courts over time to determine exactly what "without reasonable excuse" would mean. That could be somewhat expensive, could have some impact on employers who have genuinely, for a particular reason, a set of circumstances, ended up with a delay in payment of their employees or withheld the payment for a reason they have felt is entirely reasonable, but becomes, in the view of the courts, not a reasonable excuse. And I suppose that speaks to a broader concern that we still have about the substantive clauses of this piece of legislation, one of which being that it does, despite the assurances that this isn't a high burden for business, that it isn't something that businesses who are doing the right thing are going to have to worry about, it will add to the challenge that good employers have who are trying to do the right thing all of the time and can create, or has the potential to create, whether they be farmers, as my colleague Grant McCullum spoke about before, or other businesses, and that could create additional mental health challenges for employers, particularly small and medium businesses that this country is built on. And so I'd like the member to speak to us and share with us her view, Mr Chair, on the potential impacts of this legislation on the mental health of small and medium employers across New Zealand. I'd also like, Mr Chair, her to speak about, in terms of the substantive intent, and I hear this intent particularly focused on employers who employ migrant workers. This has come up a number of times today, Mr Chair, about the role of employers who have taken advantage of migrant workers. And it makes me wonder if the member would consider more targeted legislation or regulation even that focuses on that particular problem. This potentially is a very broad brush approach that captures all employers, even those, as has been said, that are doing the right thing, that are trying to go about running their businesses effectively and efficiently to grow the productivity of this country, to grow the wages and salaries of employees through doing that. And so an example of what I'm saying would be the removal, for example, of accredited employer status for employers who are caught doing wrong in terms of this type of intent. So if that is the true policy intent behind this piece of legislation, rather this bill, then I wonder if the member would be open to either a bill that is much more targeted in its policy intent, or engaging the Minister on regulation, for example, that did something, for example, like the removal of the accredited employer status in those immigration cases. The last thing I'd like to raise at this point, Mr Chair, is regarding the data on the size of the problem. We've heard the anecdotal scenarios that the member has shared. We heard several anecdotal examples in the Select Committee, but I still am yet to hear data. In 2024, X number of these cases were identified. In 2023, Y number of these cases were identified. In 2022, C number of these cases were identified. And Mr Chair, I really struggle with adding a piece of a bill, potentially a piece of legislation, to the statute books here in New Zealand to add another layer of administrative burden, something else that HR practitioners have to get their head around, without that data. Mr Chair, I'm keen to hear the member's response to those questions.
That was a lot of yapping.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I'm happy to respond. I want to point the member to the existing offences under the Immigration Act. In 2009, there are special penalties already for the exploitation of employees and temporary workers that are made under the employment legislation, and that comes with a penalty of up to 7 years imprisonment and a fine of up to $100,000. So my response to the member is the idea about targeted legislation obviously has merit. It's already in place in our statute books, and what this bill intends to do is, in fact, provide the protections that migrant and temporary workers currently have to the rest of New Zealand in respect to wage theft. In respect of his question in relation to data, the document I pointed out to him earlier that was provided by the Ministry of Justice to the Select Committee states that in 2020 there were 77 cases of wage arrears in the Employment Relations Authority, 2021 61 cases, 2022 107 cases, 2023 130 cases, and 2024 30 cases. Now, not all of these cases will necessarily reach the higher threshold of theft, but some of them may. And it does show that there is a significant issue of wage arrears currently in New Zealand that is being dealt with in the Employment Relations Authority. I can assure the member that the cases that get to the authority will be a very, very small percentage of a much larger issue. And like the member, we heard very, very compelling stories of exploitation through the Select Committee process, and I want to acknowledge the people that were brave enough to share those stories with us. This is a big problem. We do need to look at this data, and I would encourage, if this bill was to be passed, the collection of data to make sure that in the future we are able to have this offence put in place, and also look at the instances of when this has occurred. The last thing I want to just remind the member is that this is a prosecution provision in the Crimes Act. This means that it has to reach a very high threshold under the prosecution guidelines. And so I appreciate that, of course, with all changes to statutes, there's opportunity for arguments and case law, and that's the foundation of our justice system. But to prosecute someone for the crime of wage theft, I have confidence in our prosecutors and our police that they will only take cases that are likely to succeed. In fact, that is the wording in the prosecution guidelines, that must be a criteria that's met. And so I understand the members' concerns, but I think that the way that we have prosecution set up, the good people that we have working in the police, will make sure that that is taken into account at the time that they decide to prosecute that offence.
Grant McCullum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate.
Let's hold off and let's have some commentary.
I got a question for you, Sam. You run a small business. How's your mental health? Because apparently this bill's going to impact your mental health somehow.
I'm more worried about paying the GST than worried about sitting there having the police kicking down my door because I didn't pay myself as an employee wages.
I'm more concerned about the mental health of the employee that's not getting paid for their labour.
Well, yes, or the staff member who gets declined the grant at wins to help them but you should be getting paid.
Oh my God. It's like, look how hard they're fighting to drag this out as long as they can. How many people do they have that they've employed that they're asking to work overtime for next to no wages?
Oh, I mean, I wonder if they went into an audit on one of them. I mean, it would be interesting to see if they have. I mean, I wonder if Grant McCullum's been tax audited before.
Yeah, it's like this is a big self-report.
Yeah, I doubt that he would have been investigated for benefit fraud, which I actually believe is a worse process to go through than a tax audit.
Mm-hmm.
Only from the bits I've heard that people go through with benefit fraud investigations and the lengths they go to twist words or make up scenarios. I saw one on one of the working income advocacy groups. The person on the phone was accused of having a partner. Well, apparently she was in a sexual relationship, according to the call centre operator, with her grandson. But apparently her grandson was lying that it was his grandson. So maybe Grant, I think you need to have a Win-style investigation done on you.
I want to know how many migrant workers he's got.
Yeah.
Working on his farm.
Or Carl, whoever. Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook